Hello and welcome all to tonight's OddKey Cafe. I hope you're all enjoying the weekend and got lucky on today's Spawn 300 animated cover drop. It sold out in less than 20 minutes, an OddKey record, so thank you all for that. Tonight we have a very special guest. He's been in the game for years as a writer, editor, producer, and educator. He's the co-creator of Witchblade, co-founder of Anomaly Productions, and has worked closely with Todd in Image Comics. Please welcome Brian Haberlin.
Hey, everybody.
How are you doing tonight, Brian?
Good, thank you.
Sweet. So I just have a question out the gate from myself. I mean, you've been in the game forever. I mean, how has the industry changed over the years? Sort of this new digital collectibles kind of coming out. Has the community or the environment around comics in general, have they changed?
It's all technological changes that happen to a certain degree. I mean, comics are kind of comics. I mean, I've always pushed the envelope with the tech side. I'm kind of known as being the guy who's always the cutting edge tech guy with this stuff. And we did, when we started Anomaly Productions, all our books had augmented reality. I had voice acted apps, and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that I kind of found out from doing that is people who like comics. They kind of like old school, for example, most comic book fans would prefer a pencil inked and colored book rather than a painted book because, it's the holding lines, it's those things that make a comic at the end of the day. So it's a really interesting form. I think it has the people who will embrace change in it. But quite often, if I'm going to, do the best sales I can do, it's just doing the best comic I can do. Now, I mean, things have changed because, when I first started, there were color guide people. Because I first started at Top Cow in 1993, and I was there to start their computer coloring department. I didn't want to be a colorist, but that's what got me in the door, so that was all right. But we used to have color guides. So we'd have Joe Shido back then, which was, I thank him left, right, and center, because I wouldn't know as much as I know about color without Joe being around back then. But he'd hand you these beautiful, little painted watercolor marker, Prismacolor painted versions of the page. And they hand it to you and they, okay, now do this on the computer. And when I first looked at that stuff, I said, well, why don't we just scan these instead of having to reproduce it? Because at the time, the guys most of these places were hiring computer guys to do the coloring instead of artists to do the coloring. So the guides actually kind of had a purpose at that point. But I was like, well, I'm just going to hire painters and teach them how to use Photoshop. And that ended coloring guides. But it really kind of moved things forward, because then you could have a single computer colorist kind of take over stuff. But even back then in the day, it was like there weren't a lot of individuals doing computer coloring or computer art even, because to really do a full high-res something you could print, 11 by 17, 300 DPI or higher, you needed a computer that would cost you like $10,000 back in '93. So that's where they used to be like Oli Optics. That was Steve Olif's, because Steve used to color Spawn before I did. And Steve had his company, Oli Optics. And that was a funny situation, because what Steve used to color on, I was one of the first guys to bring Photoshop in to start coloring computers. They did what was a dedicated vector-based coloring software called the Cod Barrett system. And you couldn't even see what the real colors were on your monitor. You had to know what numbers colors did, from 30, from R 3 dot whatever to whatever, and you do these grads and stuff. And it was just the guys who did that stuff just still surprised me that they got the quality that they got out of it at the end of the day. But then again, at that point, Steve was in control because Steve guided everything for those guys. So he could have, I think, what was Steve doing? I want to say the first Cyber Forces were Steve, Spawns were Steve. And I think Steve did about 4 or 5 books because he had a team of guys on the computer that he could hand his marker guides to. beautiful stuff like the Max. I have a few of his guides. Just they're beautiful pieces of art by themselves.
Yeah, it's super interesting to see the evolution of digital art because, yeah, like you said, it's back in the day, it must have been extremely difficult and costly, but now it's so accessible to the masses, and like education is so accessible to the masses. It's just crazy where the industry's going with talent and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's the other big difference too. When I was coming up, because I've been an illustrator since I was 18, so that was a long time ago. But when I was an illustrator, my competition were basically people that were in California because that's where I was doing stuff, and maybe a little bit in the rest of the country, but it was small. Now, young artists coming up, they've got to compete with the whole world. I mean, they're guys working on comics and illustrations for the U.S. audience that live everywhere and anywhere, So it's actually a little harder, I think, now too.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition out there for sure.
Yeah,
I like how you said that you have always been kind of with the times and adaptive. Can you talk a little bit about your integration of augmented reality? What was that like?
Well, that was pretty much so when we started. So I was bring back to Todd. So I was editor-in-chief of Todd McFarlane Productions, running his comic side of the company, and we were trying to staff Haunt, which was Robert Kirkman and Todd together doing a book. And it was during a period of time when Marvel and DC had huge exclusivity wars, right? So I'd be calling up people and go, hey, you want to do this cool thing? Yeah, that sounds really cool, and stuff. It's like, so when are you available? 3 years from now. It's like, yeah, that's not going to work. Okay. But I'd be in these meetings. We bring some people in sometimes to meet face to face, and Todd be in the meeting, and Todd be like, yeah, but you don't want to be known for doing, Stan and Jack's characters. You want to be known for doing your own characters. And Robert would chime in, and I'd be kind of thinking on the side of the room, I used to do my own characters, and there'd be enough of these meetings where, Todd, I love you guys. I think I have to be going. I think I need to be doing my own stuff again, and that's what happened. And we started Anomaly Productions, and the idea to do this big ass. I don't know if you've ever seen Anomaly, but the book is basically 11 by 17 landscape hardcover 350-page painted graphic novel. It actually has a pullout too to make it even wider than that. And we put augmented reality was coming up, but when we first started doing the book, you needed to have a QR code to make the augmented reality work on a page. And I didn't want it to be so intrusive. I wanted you either wanted to do the augmented reality, but if you didn't do the augmented reality, it didn't hurt the page design or anything like that. And then 6 months in, the software development kit changed, and it could recognize any image. And so we were off to the races at that point. Because what was really exciting about that was so when Anomaly first came out, it had 25 interactive pages. It currently has 65 interactive pages.
Wow.
So it can actually be a book that you bought and you hold in your hands and can continue to grow after publication.
That's which is so awesome. Exciting. That is a very unique concept as well.
Well, and then what we kind of did with it, in the beginning was really, it was kind of like, basically like DVD extras. It was like, deep dive. You could pull up a character, rotate it around, find out where they were from. We had I think there was 150 extra pages of appendice information in the first Anomaly book that you could pull up, like, oh, that ship, where was it made? What's its crew complement? All that kind of stuff would be
just getting all the nitty gritty details. That's awesome.
But what I was going towards, and what most people who are doing augmented reality is a story that can only be told that way. So DVD extras, that's fine. It's easy. It's low hanging fruit. It's all that kind of stuff. But really what you want is you want to have augmented reality in a story that then it's the only way you can tell that story, that's unique, and what we started going towards, and then probably will eventually do again, there was a Jekyll and Hyde piece that I was working on, and with the augmented reality on that one, from the point of view of the other aspect of the character.
Oof, wow. And you were working on all this in 2012?
Yeah.
Yeah, dang, you're way ahead of the times.
That was part of the problem too, is we were like, so far. I mean, everybody who ever got him loved him and stuff, but it's like one of those things, especially in 2012 when we'd be at a show and we go, "Hey, you got augmented reality comics," and people would be like, "What? What does that mean?" The problem with them, and even today, it's still. I mean, you would think a lot of people would get more of it, but they don't. And you still have to kind of like. Whenever we're at shows and we show it off with we'll have iPads and we'll have a TV screen projecting the AR onto it, people just love it. They go nuts. Especially we have a children's book called Creative Creature Catcher, and that one people come to. We actually have a boast on the side of the thing, the coolest children's book ever, right? And you'll have people come up with a chip on their shoulder going, "Yeah, prove it," and they leave with 2 copies, But the problem is you got to show it to people, and hand selling is hard.
Oh yeah, and the whole idea of just augmented reality, virtual reality is still so new for a vast majority of the world, even though we've all been introduced to it.
We just did augmented reality world again. We hadn't did it for a few years, and we did it again. And I was thinking, oh man, my AR is going to be bullshit here, and it was still like cutting edge, and people kept coming by and saying how cool it was, and everything's like, okay, fine.
Yeah, I mean, if the feedback's good, that's all you need. It's just introducing people to a new concept is so difficult.
Yes, absolutely.
Out there in the audience, if you guys have any questions, make sure you're raising your hand and coming up and asking yourself, or typing them out in general chat.
I think I saw somebody ask about the 3 dots in my signature. The 3 dots in my signature come from when I was a kid. I was always the kid drawing in school. I was always a kid that other kids would come and ask them to draw their stuff in grade school. And I used to draw these dinosaurs, these little cartoony dinosaurs. And the cartoony dinosaurs always had these 3 sort of spots on their backs or whatever. And a guy I knew who was basically, I guess, my table mate in one of those classes, who was like, if you ever become an artist, you got to put those 3 dots in your signature. And that's what I did.
Wow. That, damn, brings it back. You kept it the whole time. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then sometimes when we had the studio, so my strong right arm in coloring Bond back in the day was Dan Camp. And Dan would sometimes then throw it also into his signature as just part of the studio, because it was, back then it was Haberlin Studios that I had, and we were coloring also for with Joe Quesada over at Marvel, doing the Marvel Knights stuff, and a bunch of other places.
How long did you work for Todd McFarlane as editor-in-chief?
A couple of years.
What was I know a lot of the community here kind of likes to hear the nitty gritty behind business in the comic industry, because it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Do you care to talk about a little bit behind the scenes, maybe, of what it's like working for a large comic? I mean, you own your own comic publishing company, so what is some of the nitty gritty, maybe, that we don't see all the time behind the scenes?
I've been very fortunate in my career in comics in that I've only worked for the people who could say yes or no. There was no, when I started Top Cow, it was Mark Silvestri, and when I started at Todd, with Todd, it was just Todd. It was we would just. I didn't have to go through a committee. I didn't have to go through an editor. I didn't have to go through any of the stuff. It was just, and that same thing with Joe Quesada and so many other places. I've been very lucky that way. And most people, I don't think, get to be that lucky. But when we started, I mean, I took on the job because they basically needed somebody to do it. And I was actually the book that you haven't seen that we were going to do back then. I started with Brian Hoagland on Todd McFarlane's Dragons. So we were going to take the toy line of the Dragons, because that's one of the things that I did in a lot of the books that we had going out at that time, is that we pulled things in from the toys that didn't necessarily have any presence in the comics and stuff like that. And so we were going to do Todd McFarlane Dragons, and I started doing the pages. And Brian Holguin wrote I think we have a first script from way back then, and I'd be turning in pages, and Todd be. I remember there would be the time when we were talking on the phone, and Todd's going, "Joe, the guy who's drawn this Dragons book, he's pretty good. I think maybe he should go on Spawn." And I'm like, that's me, Todd. That's me drawing. and soon enough, that's what happened.
Oh yeah. So did that Dragons book never saw the light of day though?
Oh, never saw the light of day. I think I have probably 6 pages done on it. It seems like a no-brainer. We should kind of, especially since you started to do the Dragons again, we should go that way. And we'll see. Never know. We chat about that kind of stuff every once in a while.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Bring the Dragons back. Maybe you can. I don't know if you can, but could you post like a picture of one of the panels that you guys did back in the day that's never seen the light of day?
Yeah, I don't know where I could find something like that.
Oh yeah, no worries. I'm sure that's probably deep buried somewhere. What has been some of your favorite like work that you've done or produced personally? Because I know you've worked on so many different things. Do you have anything that really stands out as your favorite?
They're all kind of your babies to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoyed this run on Hellcop. Was a lot of fun because I always wanted to do Virgil's. When Wills Potasio and I started Avalon Comics back in the day, I didn't have a chance to. I created Hellcop and the basis of Hellcop, but I was doing the color production, running the new company, writing Stone, which was Wilson's my comic, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to do it. And so I hired Joe Casey and Gilbert Monsanto to do it. But I always, if you looked at my sketchbooks, that there are dozens and dozens and dozens of them since 1998 to now, there was always some drawings of Virgil Hiltz is the lead in Hellcop. There's always some Hellcop drawings. And finally, it's like, I got to do it. I just got to do it. Plus, what's nice is I'm actually a better artist than I would have been back then anyway. So it worked out. But, Anomaly, Shifter, I mean, everyone I like a lot. I mean, Witchblade, I mean, it's like they all have their different parts. It's what's nice about having a whole bunch of these things is you can kind of play around with what you want to do to a certain point. Because sometimes you could take them, put them on the shelf for a little while, do something else, bring them back down off the shelf, dust them off a little bit, kind of thing. I mean, like right now I'm starting my next book that will be coming out from Image in February is The Last Barbarians. And so it's a big, broad D&D-esque fantasy book, and I haven't had a chance. I mean, actually, McFarlane Dragons would have been that for me, and so this is now my first sort of playing with my old D&D past.
Yeah, I gotta say I'm a fan of D&D. I'll have to check that book out once it's released.
Yeah.
She-Spawn, welcome to stage, my man.
Thanks for having me. Brian, one of my favorite comic series in the past few years was The Marked.
Oh,
and what fascinated me about The Mark, it had a great story and I really enjoyed it, but the artwork, the tattoos, I just want to know, and I know you didn't do all the covers, but the ones that you did do,
yep.
Do you think of the tattoos yourself, or do you find tattoo art, actual tattoos that you would use as a guide in the comic book, or did you just draw them just right out of your head? Because the tattoo art is just amazing.
Oh, thank you. I did a lot of research on that stuff, and I have some friends who are tattoo artists, and so at the end of the day, they're my designs. But I definitely, before I even thought about doing any tattoo stuff, I did a lot of research. and stuff. I don't have any tattoos myself, which is kind of funny, but I don't, and I don't because I have to wait. I want to wait for the day where I could have a tattoo that could change. It's like I always feel it's just too permanent for me. It's like, no, I want a tattoo that can change. Can I do that? Can that change? That probably happens sometime soon. But yeah, no, I did a lot of work on that. I do a lot of my general workflow. I'm one of these guys who I'll throw everything at something from the kitchen sink. So it'll be digital, it'll be handwork, it'll be 3D models and stuff. And what really helped with the tattoo stuff is I would build a 3D model of a woman and apply the tattoos on the 3D model so they could be consistent as I turned things and could do really just crazy detail that if I was doing it just purely old school from scratch, it would have been very hard to pull off.
I mean,
there are like so many old characters too, like this in Marvel. Cause I keep joking with CB Cebulski over at Marvel. It's like with my new techniques, with the consistent detail I could do, I could do those characters that nobody ever wanted to do at Marvel, like Jack of Hearts. If you ever saw that character's costume, it was just full of all kinds of detail and shit. It's like no one wanted to draw that character 22 pages, thing, but I could make it work. But anyway, go ahead.
They were comic books where I would read them and appreciate the story, but then I'd spend another hour. I mean, seriously, on each one of them, going back and looking at the artwork. And looking at the covers and everything, and just admiring the detail in those tattoos.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I know you didn't do it, but there was also a tattoo comic that came out around the same time, and I cannot remember the name for the life of me, but the whole comic was drawn in a nautical tattoo style.
Huh.
And the cover of it won a lot of awards that year for one of the best comic covers. And now I can't think of the name of it. And they were going to do a series, and each book was based on a different tattoo style. So instead of nautical tattoos, it would be a different style of tattoo. For the next book, but I don't think they ever published but that one. But anyway, that's off topic. That's nothing to do with you, I know. But I really appreciated that art and the mark, and I hope to see some of that in the future.
We came out with a Halloween special.
I saw that. Yes, I saw that. And I've ordered it. I don't have it yet, but I ordered it.
It has a real interesting thing on it too. We did we did two versions of it that were full 3D, red blue glasses, anaglyph glasses, 3D. And on one of the covers, we did something that was called a blink. And so if you look at it without the glasses on, you see an image. If you put on the glasses and you close one eye, it changes to a completely different image. And then you close the other eye and another completely different image. So it's a comic cover with 3 covers basically on the front of it.
Wow, I'll have to get that.
I don't know if I can upload any images here in the chat. I probably can, but I don't.
Yeah, you should be able to upload images in general chat, no problem.
Do I have to put a command in, or
just click the little plus and then upload file.
Okay.
And I also want to say that we appreciate you being here, and this community is really like a family. And we welcome you to come back anytime. You don't have to get on stage and talk like this. You can just shoot the shit with us and text us about comics or anything. Just come and join us sometimes. We enjoy having you. Yeah, and
I'm much more of a lurker, though. I'll probably just lurk.
Lurker?
Lurk, you might learn something from us.
Thank you, Sheespun. I appreciate you coming on stage, as always.
And go Scorched.
And oh yeah, Brian. Here's a quick little question: Gunslinger or Scorched?
That's one of the things I liked about when I was editor in chief, pulling in those different other spawns who we didn't really get. We got to do that Gunslinger issue, and I always thought Gunslinger was just, and I love that story was great in the Old West that we had too. So I'm gonna say Gunslinger.
Sorry, she's gone. To give you a little context, Brian, we have a trivia night in here, and there's two teams, Scorched and Gunslingers, and there's some rivalry between them. And you're the third artist to say Gunslinger over Scorched, so they're just being torched.
I actually one time there was a painted cover that Greg did, and I got to tell you, I really was never a fan of the super high top hat he's got going on. And I did an edit at one point, brought it down to like a normal size hat, but it didn't come out that way.
I honestly though, if you had a shorter hat, it might look a little cooler. I might concur with you on that
one. Yeah, I mean, it worked because Greg did it, and Greg's an amazing artist, so he can make goofballs look great. So
yeah.
There you go.
It's a talent.
But that was also one of the things I had going. What was that?
I said I was going to say thank you again, and I'm going to hop off stage now and let somebody in.
All right, thank you. But no, that was one of the other great things about having running this thing for a while. I had Greg in the background, and if I needed for when Bing Cancino did the art on that Gunslinger way back in the day, and his stuff was a little stiff, and I could hand his layouts over to Greg, and Greg would mark them up, change things, move things around. This works this way. Same thing with Philip Tan, so I had Greg to be able to okay, guys, here, hand it back to you guys. Let's bring it up a notch, Then he even did that for me too.
Yeah, that's super nice to have someone like that in your corner for sure.
I mean, again, people too discount Todd's ability. Because I've worked with all these guys. I worked with Jim Lee. I worked with Mark Silvestri. I worked with all these guys who are just really masters of the art. But Todd is the only one of all those guys who knows every aspect of sequential art inside and out. And he's also, like, Jim Lee can show you how to be Jim Lee, right? But Jim Lee can't show you how to do Mike Mignola or show you how to do some other style that he doesn't do, right? Todd can give you a lecture on how sequential works and how it works for any style that you're going to do, and including, we've had discussions, 3-hour discussions on how word balloons work. That kind of detail. People discount Todd because they think I don't say anyone discounts Todd, but they can go, oh, he just draws that way, and maybe I'm not a fan of that way, right? But he can do basically anything he wants to do. That's just his style, and that's how he does his stuff. And he can tell you this is how panel progression works. This is, if you want to slow down the story here, this is how you break up the panels this way. This is how you do the borders of the panels. I've got pages that I put up every once in a while that I have little notes with here's to pass on to Philip Tan, do panels like this, not this shape, and stuff and everything. To the point where he was so into when I started coloring for him. We would go over every book when I was done. His favorite editor was Jim Salgrup at Marvel, and Jim would not get in Todd's way when he was doing an issue, but when the issue was done, they would go over it. And, Jim would go okay, more of this, less of this, and that kind of stuff. And that's what I would do with Todd. And I remember one of the fun, to the extreme that people think I think that he's hands off on some stuff. He's not hands off. I had, when we did a Savage Dragon was guesting in Spawn, we were coloring that issue. I took the proofs to the set of the Spawn movie. And we went over them while Todd was sitting on the side of the Spawn movie.
Wow.
And it was also kind of fun. I was driving down because it was in a residential neighborhood, and they had the area where everyone's getting set up and everything. And then you had crew vans that would go down to where they were actually shooting. And I was riding down with right behind me was sitting behind me in the van was John Leguizamo in full clown outfit.
That's awesome.
And it was nice. Sure. I actually got to meet him face to face at the Baltimore Comic Con a few weeks ago, and we got to chat a little bit about that. So that was fun.
I'm sure people driving by were like, what the hell? What's up, Raul? Welcome to stage, man.
Hello. First, I love your work in Spawn, in Witchblade, and Hellcat are so awesome. I admire you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I had one question. How I can improve in the application of the color of my illustration and the storytelling. I want to be a comic artist like you and Todd, and asking the drawers. Sorry, my English is very bad. This is the question.
So I have an easy short solution for you. If you go to my teaching site, which is digitalarttutorials.com, 99% of my coloring tutorials are free up there.
Thanks. This is so help to me. This helped to so much to me. Thanks so much.
That's the URL for it right there.
In general chat. Sweet.
Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and then and there are three. They're a little old. I haven't had a chance to do many new tutorials. I do teach at Minneapolis College of Art and Design as well. The most of the things I teach on there they're all relevant still. A little bit older versions of Photoshop, but that all still works too. And I talk about color theory. I talk about all those things that you need to think of that will bring you above. You know, it's almost like to a certain point, it's like I don't even want people looking at comic art when they're doing a comic book. I want them almost to like think about more yourself as a cinematographer. You know, that was always. I mean, coloring, especially coloring Greg or coloring an artist. It's a good artist that will in the black and whites, the layout. You'll see where the light and shadow is, right? And so you'll see like Greg is shading the one side of the face darker. So I know the light is up to the left on the side. But then it's like up to me to figure out, okay, so think like that some of the best movies you've ever seen, the most beautiful movies, like let's say, I'll just throw one out. Let's say the last Blade Runner, right? That had beautiful cinematography. Okay. And so think that when you're doing, so think that there's this environment that is applying color also to your figures. So there's the color of the light. There's the color of the ambient color around that could be affecting the shadows, you know. And once you, in your head, it's actually a great way to color, and it's a cinematic approach because let's say you have a scene with Spawn in the alley with Cog, blah, 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 right? And for that whole scene, I know how I'm lighting it. So all the color just is easy in your head once you set that up because you can see the form, you know, what happens when a light is hit from that side of Spawn and what the shadow, then you think, okay, the shadow's going to be casting here and stuff. And it makes it very easy. It makes it very consistent too. And then you can think about it per scene. So if I'm in the alley, let's say I'm going to go cools as my base colors for the alleyway. And then we have a scene then with Sam and Twitch in the police offices. And then maybe I'll go warm. But it will be, you could actually go through any of my issues and see every scene has its own, and this is going back to Steve Olaf, a mother color is what Steve would used to call them. And so you really, the color will also help with the transition of, okay, we're in a different place now in a different time.
I have a second question, sorry. I don't know if I can send you some of my illustrations for a professional opinion.
Sure. The best way to probably do that is reach out to me on my Facebook's full. So Instagram, which would be Brian Haberlin Official.
Yes, I follow you.
Yeah, and then just message me. Okay.
Okay. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Thanks, Rolf, for coming up the stage. I appreciate you, my man. BK, come on up and ask your question. But man, it's crazy to how much there is just on the coloring aspect. Like, so there's so much to it behind. I love the way you put it in the words where you have to think about it as a cinematographic sort of thing, and rather than just like, oh, I'm going to put art on a page. Blade Runner was a great comparison.
Yeah, we always like, felt very much the, especially, that was part of the big deal with Image too, is that they were going to do production of a comic in a way that no one else has ever done it before. With the most high-end production, high-end paper, high-end color. We made up, half the things that I made up back in the day with John Nee, who was there as well, and Clydeen Nee, are the processes that everyone uses to take digital stuff to print now. And we made it up because there was no one else doing it. We were crazy enough to we're going to do Photoshop and do comics with it. And no one had ever done that before. And we pioneered, this is how you do a CMYK conversion from RGB. And this is, all this kind of stuff. It was kind of funny to think back about it that way,
Yeah, it's so common now, but back in the day, someone had to be first.
Back in the day, yep.
Welcome to State Flair.
What's up, guys?
Hey. How's it going, man?
Not much, man. Look, so I got a question. My question is, when you're working on a new character, you're creating something or a new comic or something, do you know when you have some heat, you got the banger, man, something about this is here? Like when you were working on Witchblade or any of that kind of stuff, do you just know this is it?
Well, it's one of those things where, because before I started in comics, I was in television, and I was in drama and comic series development at Lorimar Television. Worked on dozens of television shows, and then at Warner Brothers current programs. And you'd have shows back then that you were creating, or people that were creating that you were working on, and you were thinking, oh man, this is going to kick ass. This is going to be awesome. And just no one gets it, or it's the wrong time, right? Whatever. And for me, it's more about a book I want to do. And if people like it and buy it, that's wonderful. And that's super great. And that's what I love. That's great too. But I find that I can't predict a hit. And I don't think anyone can. So it's more about doing what makes you happy. And I think that comes through then at a certain point. The only one that I kind of knew was going to be a hit was Witchblade, because it was right when Mike Turner was turning on his afterburners, starting the art. It was just so different looking and stuff. And that one I kind of knew was going to do something.
That's awesome, man. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you bet.
Hell yeah, Rick. Whoa. Have a good night, man. Appreciate you. Brian, just a question for me. Jabizel, welcome to the stage. Didn't mean to jump in front of you. Go ahead and ask your question. Jabizel? Hello? While you're figuring that out, I'm just curious on what your thoughts are on this whole new era of collecting, digital collectibles. Have you looked into it, or I'm just curious what your thoughts are, because everyone's opinions are different.
Yeah, we were, looking into. We had a bunch of people talking to us about it. We were actually, again, with all the kind of
feel free to be on. Yeah, you can be completely honest here. Don't worry about it.
All the earthquakes that have gone on lately, especially.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because we had some very, very heavy hitters kind of coming to us to do some stuff and everything, and then depending on what happened with the coins that week is how much you heard from those people. The thing that I like about it, and the thing I tried to get, things done on it were let me jump back. So I don't know if you know about how crazy comic book original art is now. How much the pages go for, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's insane.
So comic, and it's to such a degree that, so there'll be an average, let's say, Marvel Defenders cover, not even a great one, right? An average one, right? And on Heritage Auctions last week, $72,000. Okay. And it's funny because I was up in San Francisco with my wife celebrating our anniversary a couple weekends ago. I went in a gallery that was, they had Jasper Johns, they had Rembrandt etchings, they had, all this super high end stuff, right? And most of it was way less than a comic book page would go for. Yeah, so it's changed so much. So anyway, the point is, you have these guys though who sold those pages back for $100 to some collector or something, or $200 or whatever. And now those things are like, when Bernie Wrightson passed, I want to say one of his pieces, I think, went for like $1 million or something like that, right? But his family didn't get any of that or anything. That's the good part about the blockchain, is that if you created the art in the beginning and you get to participate, whenever it's sold, if you set it up, that to me is what's relevant. And I kept, when I first, Todd and I chatted about this stuff when we were first talking about he was going to do something with Steve, and I was trying to push him to listen, there's so many guys who are doing Spawn and even him that are working digitally. It's like they don't have an original to sell, but that would be a good low edition NFT,
Heck yeah. That's what I think is really cool about the whole digital collectible space, is it's protecting artists and their creation. That's huge. And just the whole community aspect as well, where it's a great spot for their artists and the community to kind of actually engage. And so because artists have fans all over the world, and it's difficult for them to travel to these conventions and stuff like that. So definitely it's a great spot for artists and their communities to connect, and artists have their creations protected.
Is there anybody that who's basically doing NFTs but are not linking them to a digital currency? They're linking them to a conventional currency,
like NFTs for strictly fiat, like US dollars?
Yeah,
there is a few platforms for sure. Most platforms you can buy technically with a credit card.
Right,
you don't need you don't need to buy the currency, but for an NFT to be an NFT, it's got to be on the blockchain. So it's going to have some underlying coin connected to it, no matter what.
Yeah. I just wonder how, because it seems like to me that's one of the negatives to a lot of people. And if it could get around that, and I know it can be, because when I was up at San Francisco at dinner, I was overhearing a guy who was linking using the blockchain as, he was talking about again, kind of like talking about the collecting of the art we were talking about, but he was talking about rugs, like Persian rugs that I guess are really, really expensive and collectible and all that kind of stuff. And they were starting an investment group based on the blockchain where they would buy and invest the group into these different rugs, and people would own a chunk of them.
Yeah, that's crazy. There's so many different things like that. I mean, I know people would go in together on art, like super, super famous art pieces. People would create these little groups to go in and own portions of that piece of art. I don't know how feasible that actually is and whether or not there's value in that, because partial ownership of an asset that you don't have your hands on is an interesting concept.
I see where it could work as a like investing in a 401k, or investing in anything like that. I can see that kind of work and be something that's kind of interesting. But yeah, because whenever I bring, you know how it is. It's a double-edged sword. There's so many people who are like, oh, it does all this stuff. It's all bad. Blah 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 blah. The coins and stuff. But it's like, it's
the technology's still new.
The technology's still new, and I think also what throws people too is there's been a bunch of crap.
Yeah, dude. The amount of scandals in the space is unreal.
But also a lot of bad art too. At the end of the day.
Oh yeah, it's super unfortunate too. Like for people in the space, I'm sure this community can agree. Is like most of it's just bullshit. Like it's unreal.
Oh yeah.
You'll just see this art and it's going for astronomical prices and it's just super far-fetched, which is why so many people are turned off to the space. I completely agree with that.
And two, now it's also running up against the whole AI art stuff at the same time.
Mid-Journey,
which is another big,
what are your thoughts on AI art? Actually, are you very against that, or?
My entire career has been based on being cutting edge. I've been a 3D modeler since the Amiga days. I animate. I have in my offices. There are 12 3D printers. I have. I always do the high end. I always about the tools. And I remember when AI first came out, people were like, what is this? Da, 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 da. And then I did a talk on it at San Diego Comic-Con. And so that was just what was that, July of this year. And during that talk, I was saying, well, listen, it can't really do faces or hands well yet, and, 2 weeks later, it could do that, and then another week later, it could do, and to me, I think, I use it like I would I'm bringing a model into the studio and I'm going to shoot shots for reference. I'm going to put a costume on a character, light it and stuff like that I would also do in 3D. So for me, it's an awesome source of reference material.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a fascinating perspective.
You just use it like any professional artist would. But it also, it scares the hell out of most artists.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it's insane what you can cook up in 5 minutes just typing out some words.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
And what's funny too is they just came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before. Stable Diffusion, the newest version 2.0, and they changed their libraries, so they're no longer in their reference libraries are a bunch of artists or a bunch of actors too that were in the other models and stuff like that, because they're trying to move it away where no one can sue us now for this stuff. But what's going to happen is the way they did the Stable Diffusion, almost because they have these things called checkpoints, which are the databases that they work off of, and people have already made tons of custom databases. Most of them are pretty freaking weird when you go to the sites and you see the list, the ones that you can pull down. It's like, oh, that one's furry sex. No, I don't think I need that one. It's like, and some that are in horrible taste. There was a guy that did a Kim Jong-ji one and released it like the day after Kim Jong-ji died.
Oh.
But it does Kim Jong-ji, and that's kind of the scary stuff. The other scary stuff too, I think, is and which again was the thing that will probably shut some of these down is, when it's really showing like false news with it, some person that you can recognize killing somebody,
the propaganda.
Yeah, and in such photoreal ways, and it's just getting faster and it's just getting better.
Deepfake technology is already super insane. So once AI catches up to that, it's going to be. Whew.
Yeah, and it's already. It's already changing so many things. By the middle of next year, people are going to be using feature films and stuff. Will be using AI to do special effects as opposed to big 3D things. It's going to change. So many industries are going to get thrown on their heads. It's not even funny.
Yeah, AI's going to absolutely destroy the world.
I was just having this conversation today. It's like at the end of the day, you still see somebody who has an eye, because there was a company that wanted me to talk to consult with them on it. And they were like, oh, it's like we do, can it do this and this? And I go, no, I can't really do that yet. I can't really do that yet and stuff. And I said, and really, it's not great for X, Y, and Z. And then they sent back like, oh, look at all these layouts that we got done. And they all sucked, But they're all really proud of them, because they didn't know any better, right? It's like, so it can help you do a lot of bad work really fast too,
Oh yeah, just because it's cooking something up doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah.
Hey, Jabizel, feel free to unmute and ask your question anytime. Sorry for keeping you waiting so long. Oh boy, we can't hear you. Just so you know. He posted. Brian, did you happen to see that question?
Yeah, of course. I've always wanted to be an astronaut from when I was a kid. I went to film school. I have a master's degree in screenwriting from Loyola Marymount. And when I was working in television, my old grad school buddy Evan Carlos Summers landed his gig at Deep Space Nine, and I ghost co-wrote an episode of Deep Space Nine with him. But we always talked about at that point, it's like, because it was like Next Generation was out and stuff, and I always hated the freaking Jean-Luc Picard and stuff when it was like, whenever the original series is like the Enterprise and the crew got in trouble through their actions, right? And on the Next Generation, it was about their inactions. It was like, oh, let's consult about this. Let's discuss this. Number one, what do you think? Number two, what do you think? Yeah, that kind of stuff. And then they get into trouble, right? And they get this all. And I just wanted to be able to have a show that was basically. And I also hated always that, like, oh, we're on the holodeck and we're exploring 1950s America kind of stuff or whatever. It's like, or I happen to love a song from 2022, right, in the year 3000. It's like, yeah, who does that? It's like, no, just let's have a show that we have faster light travel and we get it tomorrow. And we're out there before we're ready to be out there in any way, shape, or form. And we're just going to put our foot right in it and screw shit up and then have to fix it, and to me, that's the essence of drama, your own actions get you, your own bravado get you going that way. But yeah, Fashion Light was basically my Star Trek. It was my original series, Star Trek, today.
Hell yeah. Everyone loves a good sci-fi.
And plus we didn't have two, like we have it's just the one ship that we took a hastily refitted a Mars Explorer that we had ready to kind of go, put the faster and light engines on it. And the truth of the matter was that no one, the guy who's being touted for cracking faster and light travel really is just the first person who deciphered a message that we got from an alien civilization in the 40s. That no one's been able to decipher yet. He deciphered it. It had all their technological information and stuff, and a warning saying basically, we're done. They're coming for you next. Use this information and get the hell out of there. And that would have been okay if we could have deciphered it in the 40s, but we didn't. So we now have the one ship going out there, no Starfleet to save us. It's just one ship. and find out, is the threat still even there? You know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's always interesting how protagonists get themselves into situations, and I liked how actions will get them in instead of inactions. I never really thought about that until you put it into words, but it always makes for a better story. Wow.
Yeah. Just because I don't like stupid heroes either. You know, it's like, you're gotta be able to think. You know,
what's some of your least favorite heroes that have been created?
Yeah.
You don't have to answer that. You don't have to answer that.
No, I mean, almost anything, if it's in the right hands, can be cool. You know, you take something that you think that. I still remember when I was my buddies, because when I was coming up in high school, that's when I first started reading comics. I have my friends that were into comics, and they were just cherry picking the best shit that there was too. You know, and it's like, oh, this is great. Give me the next thing. Oh, this is great. Give me the next thing. Jim Starlin. Yeah, that's cool. You know, that's cool. And then it's like, and I go, what's next? And he's like, well, there's this book called Daredevil. And I'm like, okay, what's it about? It's like, well, he's this blind lawyer that fights crime at night. It's like, what the fuck? That can't be good, right? You know, it's like, and it was Frank Miller's run on Daredevil. And it was amazing. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, the initial pitch didn't sound so hot, though. That's funny.
Yeah.
Another question. Do you have a preferred technique to create your art? Or you were talking a lot about how there's so many different avenues with 3D and now AI, but do you have a preferred?
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of stuff that I do is 3D based. I've actually developed a shader that I have in Poser that does line art, because a lot of stuff I can animate it, and so I can animate it, because the whole idea for me now is, I think we're finally at a point where, to do a Jungian reference, the sovereign creator. So now I can do a comic with, basically, I draw the character essentially once. So I'll texture map my character. It'll be a full 3D model and stuff. And then at the end of the day, I can print that out as a sculpt, like I was saying, with a 3D printer. They're all fully rigged for animation, including lip sync. And so you can do a comic, a little animated short for a commercial, or just a story. 3D printed sculpts that you can take to stores, you know, and stuff. And then usually at the end of the day, the way I kind of work it at the end of the day, I will take a hand pass essentially over a page, you know, and sometimes I'll either take it and I'll take something and I'll do a watercolor of it and bring it back into the computer. I do a lot of hodgepodging back and forth kind of stuff, you know. I try to approach a lot of this stuff not like just a regular comic book artist. I try to approach it by using tools that are maybe more a painterly tool, or a tool, like I said, for animation, you know, and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, it definitely shows up in your art, the amount of different tactics you use. Yeah. I love the paint aspect of it. It gives it a unique feel. I saw that Medieval Spawn and Witchblade had a cameo. Does Witchblade have any plans on teaming up with any of the other versions of Spawn anytime soon?
That's up to Todd.
That's up to.
It was one of those things where back in the day, the image owners would often swap, characters for crossovers, and the way it usually worked was, okay, because the first Medieval Spawn, Witchblade, was a Top Cow one, right? And I knew from all those years ago that Todd never flipped that around. So I was like, oh, let's do the one with Todd McFarlane Productions now. So it was just there was no real questioning. You know, it was just like Mark and Todd and said, yeah, great, fine.
Oh yeah, dude, that I love those crossovers. Rick Fell, welcome back to stage. Oh, Rick, can't hear you, man. Fix your mic. Oh, unfortunate. Sorry, Rick, we can't hear you, brother. But if you want to type it out in general chat, we can get your questions sorted. But if not, there's any, make sure you guys are getting your questions in. We don't want to take too much of Brian's time. We are coming up on the hour. I appreciate you so much for being here tonight. I know the community really appreciated your insight and your wisdom, because you obviously are a legend in the space and have so much knowledge to share. Is there anything coming up that you would like to talk about, or anything you'd like to plug? Feel free.
Well, we got, again, I have in February, we have The Last Barbarians, big fantasy epic, scratching my old D&D stuff. And I could paste. I'm trying to figure out how to paste. Can I just paste into the message thing down here?
Yeah, you should be able to. You should just be able to paste anything.
So I can just grab an image from the computer and just.
Just copy it and paste it, and it should just go right on over.
Okay, desktop. Let's see. Here's one of the covers. This is actually one of the trade covers. Copy. And go back.
Yeah, how many of those 3D printers do you use for D&D minis?
Actually, I'm going to do some promotional stuff for my for the book. We're sending out retail, so they're going to be little figures going out.
Ooh, maybe I'll have to start up a little D&D campaign.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I'm clicking I have to click the plus sign. Is that it?
If you're just pasting it, you can just copy it. You just have to Control V into the.
Yeah.
But if it's not working and you have it as a downloaded file, you can do the upload file.
Where's the upload file thing?
Oh, the little plus, and then the upload files right at the top of that.
If I hit the plus, I get the use / command.
That's all you get? You don't see upload file? Are you in general chat?
Yeah.
Interesting. Let me try now, maybe. Also, for those of you who are interested in learning art, I just posted the URL again, digitalarttutorials.com. Brian has a lot of educational stuff for people who are learning art and want to get their craft better. Are you still having problems uploading that, Brian?
I am. Let me try one more time. I wish I could just drag. Maybe I just drag it over. Can I drag it over? No, it's not doing it.
All that should work. You should be able to drag it over too. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not getting.
Let's see. Brian. Unfortunate.
But yeah, and if you want to, the best place to follow my stuff is Brian Haberlin Official on Instagram, because that's where I post the most.
Perfect. Brian Haberlin on Instagram. Well, thank you for being here tonight, Brian. I know the community really appreciated it, and I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you all have a great weekend. Anything you'd like to say to the community before you hop off, Brian?
Guys, thanks so much for having me. This was fun, and we'll have to do it again.
Hell yeah! Maybe when I
learn how to put pictures up.
Well, maybe when you're doing the your book release in February, you can come back around and talk about it.
That'd be awesome.
Sweet. Thank you, Brian. I hope you all have a good night.
Have a good night, guys. Night.
Sweet.